Alzheimer's disease is a progressive brain disorder that damages and eventually destroys brain cells, leading to memory loss and changes in thinking and other brain functions. It usually develops slowly and gradually gets worse as brain function declines and brain cells eventually die. Ultimately, Alzheimer's is fatal, and currently there is no cure.
Well, what my dad really enjoyed doing was going for walks. So we would go for walks 3 times a day because before he had the early signs of Alzheimer's, he would walk 5 miles a day on his own.
Wow.
So he loved walking. But when we walked, it was just around his subdivision. And sometimes we would go for a walk and we'd be back to the house and we'd get to the front door and he'd say, I want to go again. So they were double walks. So sometimes it was more like 6 walks a day. We would play checkers. We played checkers a lot. We looked at photo albums, was a big thing to do. Looking at photo albums. In the early stages, of course, he knew who the people were and the locations of the pictures where they were taken. But as he progressed, he would guess as to who the people were. And then later on, he just had no idea who anyone was. So he would just kind of smile because he didn't know. He wouldn't say that he didn't know. He'd just smile. We also, believe it or not, would go in his backyard and shoot golf balls, which for some reason he could still swing a golf club. The problem was he didn't want to be too close to him as he was swinging.
Yeah.
But he still had a good aim for hitting that golf ball. And it got him outdoors. But, cooking, he couldn't, cook or do anything in the kitchen while he was still in his home. Well, basically, we would have liked to have kept him in his own home longer. We were quite happy with the private care. But the issue was it came down to being able to afford the private care. So we had to actually sell his home because his funds were low and then put him into a facility. So it came down to the money. The plus thing about going to a facility was that there were other people there. When he was in his home, he was the only person there with one caregiver. So
once he realized we were gonna go down this road, we kind of went over there more, and I'd stay with him more. And his wife her health was declining quite a bit, so she was having a really hard time dealing with it as well. So either my dad or myself or somebody, or my aunt would come in from Texas for a week or two at a time, and one of us would stay with him. We would take him places and take him to appointments because at the point we realized he wasn't gonna be able to drive anymore, we had to have pretty much not around-the-clock care, but pretty much be there most of the day. He'd go to sleep and things like that. So just kind of ask him what he wanted to do. He wasn't going to really force this issue because he's a pretty stubborn, proud person to begin with, so you know how that is. But just trying to make him as comfortable as possible with whatever we were doing, trying to do the same things he would do, take him to lunch to see his friends, which he still does that occasionally, but not as much. But try to keep his routine the same it was when he was really, really sharp. Didn't want to break it up too much. Yeah, somewhat, because again, I mean, who wants, he understands before he got to the point he is now, he kind of understood that he needed around-the-clock care. So he didn't really feel guilty in the sense that we knew he was going to be okay. We knew he was going to be, people were going to be with him as much as possible around-the-clock care. So we were able to kind of get back to our normal routine, which was nice, because when you have someone like this, it does affect your routine. It does affect your day-to-day life. So, but you care.
Oh, did I ever? I cried for 6 months before we put him in. I know I cried all the time, off and on, every day I cried. And then we got him down there, and then for about 6 months afterward, I cried about every day. It was awful. It was an awful guilt feeling for me. But as he became used to it and a little more adjusted and everything, then I kind of said, this is what's got to be, so we've got to learn to accept it. And the whole family was very good about visiting him, and we'd take him out from time to time to do things. And so it got better. As time went on, it got better. And now today, 2 years later, I'm not crying about it anymore. And he's getting used.
You put him in a facility.
Oh, it's kind of like I don't like living alone. Well, it's like I read a posting on Facebook that somebody made. It said he feels like he's a married widower, and that's kind of how it is. You're married, but yet you're living the life of a single person, a widow. It's almost like your spouse has passed away, but they haven't. They're still here, but you can't. He doesn't interact with me much. We don't talk. That's what I miss the most. The thing I miss the most is having somebody to share with, and to understand, and to talk things over with, and make decisions with. And he's not there anymore. He's there in body.
Members in homes.
To remember to come and visit often so they don't forget them.
Yeah, like you're not just putting them away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And take them out once in a while.
Yeah.
Because getting them out means a lot to them. It gets them out, it breaks up the monotony.
Definitely understand what they go through. I never knew that until we did our training, how hard it is to care for them, the needs that they have. Kind of, get a feel of what they feel like.
I would say keep them home as long as you can. If you can have them in your own house, that would be ideal. Even if you have to have caregivers come into your home, that way you've got some control over, what's going on. You don't really know what goes on because they can't tell you. It's like taking your child to a daycare center when they're 1 or 2. You think it's a great place, but you really don't know because you're not there. You drop them off, you leave. So it's the same with an elderly person with Alzheimer's. They can't communicate to you what goes on after you leave.
The biggest thing is to try to keep their routine and their standard of living as high as possible, because at some point they're going to be lost. I mean, they're not going to know you. They're not going to know people they were married to for 40, 50, 60 years even. That's the hard part. So the comfort level, keeping them as comfortable as possible and keeping them happy is the biggest thing. And there's no set 10 rules, step system that you have to follow in order to be able to make sure that their life is full. because it's not going to be the same. So just keep them as comfortable as possible is the only advice I really know.